Hi everybody, it's Franny, and I thought it'd be really fun to do an episode to see if we can figure out why air-cooled is so special. By pretty much all measures, the very first of the liquid-cooled cars, the 1999 996, was superior to the outgoing 993 of the time. So why is it that the 993s are worth about 4 times what one of those early 996s are worth? Well, that's kind of strange. Well, at any rate, let's go ahead and see if we can figure all this out. I've got a few categories, and love to hear all of your comments down in the comment section as well. So let's start with the most obvious one, which would be probably nostalgia. So these cars represent the original designer's intent on these cars. Flat 6 air-cooled, and the 356, which was the original Porsche, is a flat 4, but still air-cooled. So these harken back to the original designer's ideas, and also therefore kind of line up best with the original DNA of the original 901 that all the 911s came from. So there's another thing as well. A lot of us who have gotten into Porsches over the years cut our teeth on Volkswagen products. So that would be Volkswagen Beetles, fastbacks, buses, and they back in the day were all air-cooled as well. So it just kind of became kind of this air-cooled way of life. And then when Porsche switched over to water-cooled, a lot of us were just kind of like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So I think this nostalgia bit is very important to us. The other thing is the air-cooled is also a very definable section. I mean, the car's either air-cooled or it's water-cooled. So that's a pretty obvious break. It's not like, well, one year they had a certain type of suspension or something you can't really see. These cars, it's pretty obvious. I think another obvious draw on these cars is the sound. They sound very different than liquid-cooled cars because you've got this whirling fan going on back here. And also I think the water has a tendency to sort of dampen out some of the higher frequency vibrations, and it makes the engine sound a little less mechanical possibly. So these just feel a little more raw. But let me run you through all these cars, and so you can get a real good idea of what they actually sound like. Air-cooled cars are also just very different than pretty much anything else on the road. Outside of their Volkswagen cousins, the only other car I can think of with an engine similar to these sort of things would be like a Carrera or something. So this is a pretty rare kind of configuration of an engine. 911s and 356s, of course, have the engine in the back and all that, but that's common through all lines, water-cooled or air-cooled. So I think what it really is, it's just a very different technology. And it takes kind of a specific knowledge, I think, to work on these cars. They heat up differently than a normal liquid-cooled car would. They just kind of act differently. The heat in the car works differently. The way you tune them, the way you work on them, the different systems. You know, so oil is so important, and so the thermostats are actually on the oil systems. But without having a water pump and hoses and water and radiators and everything, there's less moving parts in the cooling system as well. So I don't know, you could say it's a little simpler, a little easier to work on possibly, and arguably maybe a little more reliable because of that. Certainly, you're not going to be out on the road somewhere and have the radiator system blow apart on these cars. So a little less vulnerability maybe as well. So those are some big pluses, I think. It's certainly in my book. All these sorts of things. It's just different, and I think that's always kind of fun. Outside of the engine actually being air-cooled, there's other differences in the cars that really you don't see in the newer cars, and that has to be these gorgeous hips on this car. The 993 especially, very curvaceous, and it's nice because it sort of pulls in the center, so it has sort of a belt line if you want to think of it from the top. It's a really beautiful line on this car. And when they went to the 996, they sort of flattened the sides, and some people even call them slab side cars because they're very flat. They sort of pulled the center of the car out, probably to get more, width in the car inside and stuff, make a little roomier inside, which is all great. Like I said, the 996, kind of superior in pretty much every way. But I think this wonderful hippie curvaceous line on this car is really special. And it's the same story here with the 3.2 Carrera. Look at that. This rear end on this car is just wonderful with these flared fenders and things in the back, and it tucks in nicely for the belt line there. You just don't see that on the modern cars. Something else you see on the older air-cooled cars are these headlights and these front wings here. That's just a look you don't get on the newer cars at all. Even the 993, it's much less pronounced over there. So this is just a really interesting look, and to me it's just very traditional for Porsche. I just love this look. So these are the air-cooled cars. They all kind of look like this. All the G-body cars are similar in this respect. This gauge layout here with the 5 gauges all in a row like that, the circular analog gauges, you just don't get that outside of the air-cooled realm. Another thing is the smaller center consoles. I think that's really nice. It opens up the whole interior really well. It's just a very specific look that Porsche carried through all of the 911s. Even in the last of the air-cooleds, the 993, you still see the 5 gauges all in a row there, and a smaller center console. Possibly another draw to these cars is that certainly with the 356, these cars were completely built by hand. They were welded by hand, they were shaped by hand, even the paint was sanded in the end by hand. And I think as the cars grew and up through the lines, there was probably a little more automation brought in, but still, there's just something special about a car that was built by human hands, something possibly maybe a little more relatable. I really like that aspect of it. You can just see that they're not all perfect underneath there. Not all the welds are exactly the same distance apart. I think that adds a little bit of character to the car. I really like it. I'll leave you with one parting thing to kind of think about with these cars. Let's say you had $50,000 and you wanted to go out and buy a Porsche. I know that's kind of a lot of money, but say you did. Your choices would be between a nice 3.2 Carrera, let's say so a later model, with say 70, 80,000 miles, and a 991. So that's incredible, like a 2012 or 2013 with about 70,000 miles on it. It's funny that this car would be worth the same amount of money as a 991. It really shows you the love that people have for the air-cooled cars. They're really fun, they're very engaging, they're very visceral, historic, nostalgic, all that. And I think that it really shows in the valuations of the cars. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I really want to hear your comments. Why do you think air-cooled has that crazy valuation on the market? A car is worth what somebody will pay for it, and people will pay a lot for these cars. So why is that? I always think that's a very interesting question. So if you have any questions or whatever, go ahead and leave them down below, and I'll try to get to them. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you, of course, to our Patreon supporters. And until next time, safe travels. Bye.